over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings and welcome back. Thank you all for joining. Well, folks, they've done it again. U.S. forces killed 2 in strike on alleged, and I underscore alleged, drug boat in the Pacific. U.S. forces have struck a second vessel alleged to be carrying drugs in the Pacific Ocean amid an escalating U.S. campaign against seaborne drug smuggling. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said 3 people on board the vessel were killed and no U.S. forces were harmed. The strike comes about 8 hours after the U.S. announced a separate attack on a boat in the Pacific, which killed 2 additional people. Both vessels were known to U.S. intelligence and were believed to be carrying drugs along a known trafficking route in international waters, according to Hegseth. That means you must question everything you're being told about these operations. Folks, when someone like Russell Vought says that we're in a post-constitutional America, is this what it looks like? How concerned should we be? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events occur. Let's quickly look at a couple of today's headlines. The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, says Israel is obligated to work with UNRWA. Jerusalem categorically rejects the notion. In a non-binding opinion, the top UN court dismisses Israeli submission on Hamas, quote, infiltration, end quote, on Palestinian Relief Agency, claiming insufficient evidence that is not neutral. The ICJ issued this advisory opinion yesterday, asserting that Israel is legally obligated to allow the UN's controversial Palestinian Relief Agency to provide humanitarian aid in Gaza, and stated that the provision of aid to the Strip during the war has been inadequate. This came from the Times of Israel, so the reference of the UNRWA being controversial must also be taken with a grain of salt. And with that, in response to that, the U.S. State Department issued the following response. The United States has rejected the ICJ rebuking Israel over its Gaza aid restrictions during the war, calling it a, quote, nakedly politicized, end quote, non-binding advisory opinion, which, quote, unfairly bashes Israel, end quote. Quote, another corrupt ruling by the ICJ as President Trump and Secretary Rubio worked tirelessly to bring peace to the region. This so-called court issues a nakedly politicized, non-binding advisory opinion, blah, 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 blah. And then if I didn't say that earlier, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, folks, this is not a statement issued by an independent arbiter, as the United States tries to hold itself out to be. Republicans struggle to explain shutdown of the House. Speaker Mike Johnson's initial strategy to jam the Senate has not worked, but he refuses to change his tactics. This week, he faced somewhat of a tough love complaint from a usually very loyal soldier among rank and file Republicans, that being Representative Beth Van Dyne. She says the shutdown strategy is old and Republicans need to have new tactics. And Mike Johnson responds to that by saying that she's a dear friend and that she was not being critical, but instead pushing for something to break up the monotony of the current impasse. What that means makes absolutely no sense to me, and I'm sure it makes no sense to Mike Johnson, and that's just Mike Johnson. Finally, Trump wants to name Antifa a foreign terrorist organization. Trump has already issued an order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Now he wants to flip the script or modify it and label Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization. First thing you need to understand is it's not an organization. It's an ideology around which a lot of people gather that consider themselves to be anti-fascist. The important thing to realize here is that if he is successful in redesignating Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization, then federal prosecutors can bring criminal charges of material support against individuals that the administration wants to designate as supporting this ideology. On today's episode, the issue before us is, again, U.S. forces have struck a second vessel alleged to be carrying drugs in the Pacific. Trump has said he has legal authority to continue bombing boats in international waters, but said he may go to Congress if he decides to expand the targets on land. For insight into this, my guest is a labor and human rights attorney, former professor and author. His latest book is Syria, Anatomy of Regime Change, which he co-authored with Dr. Jeremy Kuzmarov. My guest is Professor Dan Kovalik. As always, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. You know, just the last thing you said, it reminded me of an old SNL skit. You know, they used to have these, they used to dress up as these old ladies, and they'd say something like, remember this? You know, they'd say something like, you know, Trump wants to designate Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization. It is neither an organization nor is it foreign. Discuss amongst yourselves, you know. Anyway.
Yes. No, you're right. But so, in fact, I'm glad you came back, because that's really where I first wanted to start with you as a human rights attorney. Trump first designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. And again, it's not an organization. I've said on the show a number of times, you can't dial information in your city and say, can you give me the number for the local Antifa office?
Right.
It doesn't exist.
It's anarchists who decide to go out on any given Sunday or whatever day and, you know, wear something saying Antifa. Yeah, it's not an organization. It's more of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, so it's kind of a specter that Trump wants to fight against. But it kind of, you know, it's scary in that sense, because since it isn't a real organization, his targets can be whatever I suppose he wants it to be. Which goes to one of your first points, that we do live in seemingly a post-constitutional America where there are no limits of what the government can or will do.
You know, Antifa stands for anti-fascist. And I hope I don't have a knock on my door and get arrested for asking this next question. Who wouldn't be anti-fascist unless you're a fascist. And now they do, some Antifa subscribers do engage in anarchy. They get out and they throw bricks and they do all kinds of public disruption, which I don't subscribe to. But getting back to the point of once you designate anti-fascist as an international terror organization, that's an incredibly broad scope. That gives the administration very wide latitude to round up and persecute a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, because again, many of us are anti-fascist. And so, yeah, no, that is the scary part of this. By the way, it also reminds me, in the 30s, there were people considered premature anti-fascists, right? The people who supported Spain, Republican Spain, against Francisco Franco, and this is kind of like that. We're all a premature anti-fascist.
Wait a minute. That reminds me of the SNL skit. Francisco Francisco Franco is still dead.
Yeah, Chevy Chase used to do it. Yeah, it's a good one. So, no, but it's scary. Like you said. I mean, basically, since it's not a real organization, he will just say, "Well, you're Antifa, so you could be arrested." For your whatever, for your sympathies, or So we're getting into very crazy territory here, which of course also, segues into these bombings of these boats.
Thank you. That's where I was going. Go ahead.
Which, again, actually, I read a very short statement by Senator Rand Paul today. I thought he had probably one of the best succinct critiques of what he's going on. First of all, he's saying, look, the biggest problem with U.S. drugs is fentanyl, and that's not coming from Venezuela. Not an ounce of it is. That's coming from the Pacific side, which Venezuela does not have. Okay, but the other thing he pointed out, which very few pointed out, is that these boats that are being bombed would need to be refueled 20 times before they got to the United States. They're little boats. They're not ships, right? They really don't. They're not built to do what Trump claims they're doing, bringing drugs to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it in at least a couple instances that the people killed were just fishermen, civilians. Mm-hmm. Some from Trinidad, Tobago, which I don't think the U.S. has claimed Trinidad, Tobago's doing anything wrong. Some Colombian, these are extrajudicial killings. The other point is, if there's someone drug trafficking, what you first have to do is, the U.S. The proper thing to do would be to work with a government to extradite these people, and they should be tried in a court of law. And if the evidence is such, they should be convicted and sentenced. But even if that all happened, they're not going to be sentenced to death because it's not a capital crime. So, right, just murdering them, there's nothing about that meets due process or anything we think of as acting as a civilized nation would. It looks more like piracy, or again, just outright murder. And what's really troubling is that so few people seem concerned about it, concerned that this is what we're resorting to. To what end, it's not even really clear, except maybe to satisfy some bloodlust on the part of the Trump administration. Though I will say that, this would not be the first time this sort of thing has happened. I mean, Obama's drone campaign
mm-hmm.
looked a lot like this, and he would be murdering entire wedding parties, right? And he killed at least two U.S. citizens. Again, all summarily, without warrants, without, real cause. So, I mean, this is not anything particularly new, though this seems maybe a little more brazen. And again, there's very few people critiquing it.
Do you remember when speaking about Obama and the murder of the two Americans, when right after that happened, Attorney General Eric Holder came out and said publicly, the President of the United States has the right to kill American citizens without judicial review anywhere he finds them. Do you remember that statement?
Yeah, I do. And it's insane.
Okay.
It's insane. I mean, this cannot be correct. And again, all of this, what this shows is really over the years, our constitutional rights have been whittled away at.
Mm-hmm.
And the U.S.'s commitment to international law has been whittled away at, to the point where this sort of thing is now just allowed to go on without much pushback. And that's what's most scary about it. You know, the American people have largely become inured to it. You know, this is just what the U.S. does, and that's not a point where we should be at.
You mentioned extrajudicial killing. For those who, many of us hear the term, but if you could, as a human rights lawyer, define the term, and then what is the recourse?
Well, an extrajudicial killing means that there's no warrant by a court of law giving some police powers to apprehend a criminal, and then, you know, I suppose if there's a gunfight, ultimately potentially kill that person, but only if in self-defense, not just summarily, you know. So it is something that, you know, comports with due process requirements. Courts are generally the only ones who can give that type of power, and the courts have not done that in this case. No court has said, oh, these people in these boats, you should go and apprehend them because they're drug traffickers, you know, much less you should go and kill them. I mean, and again, even that, you know, there's no, I don't know warrants that are given out to just go and kill people. Again, people can be in certain states sentenced to death, but never for drug trafficking only. You know, murder, capital first degree murder is the only time that happens. So none of this meets the requirements of a judicial killing.
Even Manuel Noriega wasn't sentenced to death, and he was alleged to have been an international drug kingpin, which, of course, those questions are questionable. But again,
yeah, well, I think he was, because he was working with the CIA
during the Reagan administration.
Drugs. Right. You know, and but that was not the issue, right? The reason they turned on him is because he wouldn't continue to help the Contras in Nicaragua. And by the way, so we're seeing a replay of that now, right? They're now claiming Gustavo Petro is a drug trafficker, and, you know, but what they really care about is that Petro himself does not want to help out in an invasion of Venezuela. And he's spoken out on that. Actually, you know what, Wilmer, you know, he called me last night. I'm not kidding. And he wants me to help bring a lawsuit against Trump for slander, for slandering him as a drug trafficker. So anyway, but so this looks a lot like the Manuel Noriega situation. And just to remind people of this, because very few people remember this. And again, now you have to be pretty old to even have a memory of it. In 1989, George H.W. Bush, so George Bush Sr., ordered an invasion of Panama City, again, under the guise of drug fighting. But mostly what they did is they attacked working class neighborhoods in Panama City, killed hundreds to thousands of people. It's not known how many people were killed. I've heard anything from 400 to 4,000 people. And then they apprehended Noriega and brought him to the U.S., and he was tried and sentenced for drug trafficking. I think he was ultimately released before he was killed, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, what many believe, and I believe the purpose of that invasion was a couple-fold. One, it was to retaliate against Noriega for not allowing Panama to continue being a beachhead for the U.S. in its Contra war against Nicaragua, but also to threaten Nicaragua. So this was happening in advance of presidential elections in Nicaragua. And elections, the U.S. did not want the Sandinistas to win. And so this, certainly the Nicaraguan people saw this as a threat, right? That if they would do this to Panama, they would do this to Nicaragua. So I think that was one of the purposes. And I think the other purpose goes to the other issue we're talking about, is that was happening as the Soviet bloc was falling.
Mm-hmm.
And Bush wanted to show the world that the U.S., without the Soviet bloc as a deterrent, could act without Security Council authorization to attack any other country at will. So it was really a means to show the U.S. didn't have to abide by international law. So that was the point that was made there. And I think in many ways what Trump is doing now and threatening to do have the same and similar, purposes behind them.
The same and similar purposes behind them. Unemployed Scholar, thank you very much for that $5 super sticker. There's been extrajudicial killings in the Philippines for decades. It's treated as if it's normal.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, I don't dispute that, and that's condemnable, but the U.S. holds itself out as, hopefully a little more, advanced as a constitutional government, which has existed for 250 years now. We've held ourselves out as this beacon on the hill. Engaging in extrajudicial killings is not, does not comport with that, right? I think that sort of thing needs to be condemned wherever it's happening, for sure.
So you just mentioned in passing that the Colombian president Petro called you last night and said that he wanted you to help him bring a defamation suit. Trust me, that didn't go past me, Dan. I got that because he didn't call me. Well, actually, he did. And I told him to call you. So without giving any information you can't give, was he looking to do this in U.S. court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're hoping to do that here. I mean, we're looking into all of our options.
Okay.
But, you can't go around, even the president of the United States can't go around calling other people not just dealers. I mean, they said he was making drugs, personally, which is absurd. And of course, they're using this as a justification to possibly attack Colombia and Venezuela. So it has serious implications. So he wants to push back on this. And, so we're looking into the options of where we can bring this case and how we can do it in the most, effective way possible. So
he's also called him a thug.
A thug, correct.
And so give folks a little bit of background on him. Because he's been a freedom fighter,
yes,
and fighting for the liberation of Colombia.
Yeah, he was a guerrilla fighter with the M19 guerrillas back, I think, in the 80s. I mean, he's been around a long time. And then there was a peace deal between the government and those guerrillas, and ultimately he received, I believe, amnesty for, under that peace deal.
Mm-hmm.
He then ran for and became a senator in Colombia. I met him when he was a senator. And the big thing he did, the thing he's most famous for, is that he was the first congressional leader of Colombia to expose the connection between the paramilitary death squads and the government, which was a big deal at the time, and it's now well known that there were those connections. He then was elected mayor of Bogota, which is I believe it's the biggest city in Colombia, which is often seen as kind of the, jumping off point to become president. But at some point, the president of Colombia at the time removed him as the mayor, and Petro fought back on that, and he gained his position back. And then he ran for president, and he won on, a very progressive platform. His vice president is an Afro-Colombian woman, Francia Marquez, who I've also met. And I was at his inauguration, actually, for president.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I've known him for quite a while, because at one time when he was senator, he was getting death threats because of his exposing this what they call the parapolitical scandal. And so I, through the steelworkers, had him brought to the U.S. to address the U.S. senators on this issue, and to give him a little support and profile to help prevent him from being killed in Colombia. So I have this history with him to this day.
While they were blowing up boats in the Caribbean Sea and extrajudicially just murdering people, we were told, of course, they're drug smugglers, they're drug boats, blah, blah, blah. Then they blow up a boat and there are 2 survivors. And so initially we're told, they were drug smugglers. They've been sent to, or they've been detained, and they're going to be tried for drug smuggling. Then by the end of that day, some of their family members speak out and say, no, these gentlemen aren't drug smugglers. They're fishermen, and they were out in the ocean fishing. Then the next day, the story is from the United States, we're repatriating them to their countries. That, to me, signaled the biggest, damn, we made a mistake. That, so haven't heard a peep since. Do you have any insight into I'm sorry. We were told that they were going to be repatriated and tried in their own countries. That's what it was. Tried in their own countries, but no evidence has been presented from those countries. So can you give us any insight into, are these folks eventually going to get a pretty big check from the United States for damn near killing them?
Well, it's possible. They would have recourse under what's called the Federal Tort Claims Act. That does waive sovereign immunity of the government in a case like this, where you have a serious tort, physical injury or death. I would think the families of these deceased could do that. We'll see, what happens. But it certainly also, it raises the question: if they're repatriated to be tried, why couldn't you have just done that to begin with all the people, instead of murdering them, right? I think the only mistake they made, in their view, was they left survivors, who could talk. I mean, that's the crazy part about this. I mean, and that's why, extrajudicial killings are so bad, because you end up killing innocent people. We think that's a bad thing, right? Their whole, in the U.S., we often say we'd rather 100 people go, 100 guilty people that go free than one person put to death who was innocent, and this is the opposite view, right? This is shoot first and ask questions later. This is not appropriate. This is vigilante. I would say justice, but there's no justice in it. It's just vigilante murder. And again, to what end? It's just shocking to me. I can't even see a policy behind it, in truth.
Well, when this first started, as it relates to the Caribbean Sea, a lot of people, me being one, was saying that all Trump is trying to do is establish this drug carrying courier narco state rationale for going in and removing President Maduro. And then you have Marina Corina Marquez. Is that her last name?
Machado.
Machado.
Got the Nobel Prize. Yeah.
Right. Maria
Corina Machado.
Machado. So then they award her the Nobel Prize. And I said, oh, all they're trying to do is establish a greater predicate to go in and assassinate Maduro. Then Barack Obama comes out and says, oh, she's a fighter for democracy and liberation. Barack, what?
Yeah.
So you've spent time in Venezuela. You know the lay of the land. If you could figure out a question in there somewhere. And
yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you that it appeared at first that, yeah, the goal was to carry out these provocative acts against Venezuela, possibly force Venezuela to retaliate in a certain way, and then, precipitate an invasion. But now it's, now that they're hitting boats from Trinidad and Tobago, from Colombia, now in the Pacific Ocean, again, Venezuela has no Pacific side. Now it's really baffling as to really where they're going with all this. As to Maria Corina Machado, she is I guess you could say, an opposition leader of sorts in Venezuela. I say of sorts because at one time she was a serious potential candidate, opposition candidate. Now she doesn't really have much support anymore. She's considered part of the disloyal opposition, and she's disloyal because she's called for the U.S. and Israel to invade her own country of Venezuela. I mean, that's not really what patriots usually do, and called upon the U.S. to engage in sanctions against her own country, which have killed thousands of people. So she's not very popular there, and she's not, again, someone who is someone, frankly, that deserves to be given the Nobel Peace Prize. As you say, I also, it's also pretty clear that she was given the prize as a means to support Trump's aggression against Venezuela. That's pretty clear, which also shows how, morally bankrupt the Nobel Peace Prize Committee is. But again, where all this is headed now, with the willy-nilly just murder of these people from all sorts of countries in the Caribbean and South America, is, I don't know what to say. I don't know where this is all headed, and I don't know what the purpose of this is now.
So now it's being reported that President Maduro is saying that Venezuela has thousands of Russian anti-aircraft missiles to counter U.S. threats. Your thoughts on how concerned are you that there's a looming, pending, ominous U.S. strike on Venezuela, and Maduro coming out and saying we've got Russian anti-missiles capabilities, and we know that Russia's anti-missile technology is the best in the world?
Yeah, well, obviously that's a risk, and and that obviously risks a possible direct military confrontation with Russia. I mean, that's why all this is very, very dangerous. But again, I don't know what the game plan is for the United States.
Is there one? Is there one?
Yeah, it appears to be none. I mean, I think they would try to assassinate Maduro if they could. Okay, I think that, but would that solve the problem? I mean, there's other leaders that would take his place. I'm not sure that would be the end of the Chavista revolution as we know it. A full-scale invasion, we don't have the manpower for that. There's now 8 million people who've joined the militia in Venezuela. 8 million. I mean, the U.S. has nothing close to that. And they say in order to win a successful guerrilla war, anti-guerrilla war, you need like a 10-to-1 ratio. The U.S. would need 80 million people to do it. It's just not going to happen. So, again, it looks a lot like what the U.S. did with Iran. It hit some targets. Iran says they weren't even nuclear targets. And Trump called it a day and went home. And maybe that's what Trump will do here. Hit some random targets, say we did something big, and then call it a day. I mean, it's really crazy.
You just mentioned even if they were able to take out Maduro, it wouldn't be the end of the revolution. That's a very important distinction, I believe, between Maduro in Venezuela and some of the other folks that the United States has taken out, such as what's his name?
Lumumba, maybe. And
no. Here's where I'm going. I'm thinking of what's his name in Iraq.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. Is that the United States, through its rhetoric, loves to personalize the enemy and vilify the enemy. We're not fighting with Russia as much as we're fighting with Putin. Right. We're blah, blah, blah.
Even though he has 80% supporters.
Exactly. But in Venezuela, I think one of the mistakes that folks in the West don't really understand, it has nothing to do with Maduro as an individual in Venezuela. It has nothing to do. They don't love Maduro because he's Maduro, because he's some charismatic leader. They love Maduro because he represents the revolution.
Right.
And the minute he deviates from the revolutionary aspects of the Chavista movement, they'll handle him themselves. So to your point, if the United States were to successfully remove him, all we're doing is what we always do: create a power vacuum that we can't control.
Right. Or again, I'm not even sure there would be one. Again, I think there's good leaders that would rise to the surface. Mm-hmm. And you raise a good point. The truth is, Maduro is not a charismatic leader. The truth is, he's not particularly charismatic. I mean, he is not like Chavez, his predecessor, right, who was a charismatic leader, who I think his murder, and by the way, some people think he was murdered. I don't know if there's evidence of that, but his murder actually, I do think, would have made a huge difference. And his death did make a huge difference, right? I think it did weaken the revolution to some extent. Maduro is not that type of leader. He's not like a Chavez. He's not like a Castro. It's not, the revolution is not, as you said, not seen embodied in him. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, an assassination of him is not really what would be particularly effective. So, and if Trump thinks it is, he doesn't understand the situation there.
In fact, it would probably only exacerbate the situation. I think to your earlier point, I don't know, and that's why I turn to brilliant people like you. I don't know enough about the internal workings of Venezuelan politics to know who's next in line. But I can let me make 2 points. One, I don't think there would be a vacuum. And two, you mentioned the militia. Elaborate on that a little bit, because I don't think enough Americans really understand that if the United States had to go in and engage in a guerrilla war in Venezuela, it wouldn't last long and we wouldn't fare well.
Yeah, because again, so they have a standing army that's not huge. I think it's in the couple 100,000 range. But since these threats by the United States, 8 million civilians have joined militias to defend the country. That's a huge number of people. I mean, yeah, it's about, between them and the standing army, that's about a third of the entire population that's armed and ready to fight, which also shows, again, that Maduro has some serious support. If he had a third of the country willing to fight to defend it, I'm not sure you could find that in the United States, right? And it also means that, yeah, I mean, a U.S. invasion, with actual forces would be either clobbered or be bogged down in a Vietnam type conflict. So it's just not realistic. And that's why we haven't done it yet. I mean, and that's why you had the one, and I'm forgetting his name, the one U.S. general who quit over this. He's saying this is crazy, this is madness. And I think you're going to see the military of the United States. You're going to see more mutinies happen.
You mean Admiral Halsey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the one. Who I think there's an Admiral Halsey mentioned in a
The Beatles. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. We're on the same wavelength today, Wilmer. I guess we like the same thing. So, anyways, I'm sure you thought about that right away.
Oh, absolutely. I can sing it, but I won't.
Yeah. But in any case, yeah, it's a fool's errand. And also, all it's going to do, and it's doing this right now, all it's doing is uniting South America, right? You have Lula, who's denouncing the U.S. for this. Lula has not been a real friend to Maduro. In fact, he prevented him from Venezuela from becoming part of BRICS. Now you have Lula defending Maduro in Venezuela, right? So all this is going to do is unite the region against the United States, which is pretty much what is happening around the world, right? This over-aggression is backfiring in a big way. And as I read this morning, and I forget what paper it was or outlet, maybe it was Consortium News. I mean, it kind of stated the obvious, and that is that, for a long time, the U.S. would justify its violent acts, by claiming, oh, we're fighting terrorism, we're fighting communism, we're supporting democracy, whatever. There was always at least a fig leaf of a pretext. There's not anymore, right? Now they're barely even justifying what they're doing with blowing up these ships. They're just saying we're murdering people and deal with it. That is not a way to win hearts and minds in Venezuela or Colombia or anywhere else in the world. The U.S. has lost its stature in the world, its diplomatic prestige in the world. Now, one could say they never really deserved those things because it's always been, a warlike country. And I would say, yeah, that's true. But most of the world didn't see it that way. Most of the world still saw the U.S. as, again, this beacon on the hill, long-standing democracy, a country that cared about human rights. Again, there was a lot of contradictions there, but now that's gone. No one believes that anymore. And that's significant. That cannot be overstated how important that is to lose that. And now all you have is naked power, and that's not enough. It's not enough.
Admiral Halsey notified me he has to have a berth or he couldn't get to sea. I think it's Uncle Albert. We're so sorry, Uncle Albert.
It is. It's an Uncle Albert song, yeah.
Luis says, you're both missing the point. War for the U.S. is not initiated to win, but to profit. Luis, I can't debate that with you in any way, shape, or form.
A lot of truth to that. Although I think in this case, one of the profits they want is Venezuela's oil, right? So they would have to win to get that oil. But you're right. Even short of that, there's companies that will make a lot of money on merely attempting to overthrow the government there. I mean, there's no question, and that is what we call in the law a moral hazard, right? That companies and that huge swaths of the economy profit off a war. So what does that do? It gives an incentive for wars. I forget who said it, but said it well. It used to be that the business of the U.S. was business. Now the business of the U.S. is war. And that's very true. And that is a huge discredit to our country.
You mentioned access to Venezuelan oil, and there. Have you read in the New York Times last week? There were articles saying that Maduro offered access to Venezuelan resources, and they were making this out to be as though he were doing this under the table and trying to save his own life. Whereas I've talked to folks like Ricardo Vaz from Venezuelan Analysis who says, "This is nothing new. He's been doing this for a long time, saying, look, we can negotiate all of this. There's no reason for you to bomb or do whatever you're doing. If you want access, we can do business."
Of course.
So your thoughts on the nefarious intent that has been ascribed to this by some?
No, it's very true. I mean, even under Chavez, recall, I mean, they were selling oil to us through Citgo.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Citgo? The U.S. ended up stealing that from them. But Chavez was willing to sell oil. He was willing to deal with U.S. companies. He just wanted to do it on a fair basis, right? It reminds me of when we were protesting, my young family was protesting against the Iraq War, in 2002, 2003. And my kids, of course, children, the wisdom they have, they said to me, if we want Iraq's oil, why don't we just buy it? Well,
that's a very astute question.
A very astute question. Of course, the answer is we don't want to buy it. We want to steal it.
That's more fun.
Yeah, and it's more profitable. So the point is the U.S. can't. Well, and Chomsky always says this. It's not about access to oil. The U.S. has all the access it wants in the world to oil.
Mm-hmm.
It's about control,
mm-hmm.
and it's about domination, and it's whoever controls the oil controls the world, and that's what this is about. And also super exploitation of the oil. Again, they don't want Venezuela to get a fair cut of their own oil.
In fact, to that point today, and I never thought I'd be quoting Katie Tur from MSNBC, but she said today they were talking about the sanctions on Russia and Russian oil. And she said, and whoever her guest was, said that Trump is a drill baby drill guy. And she said, yes, but in order for that drill baby drill message to resonate in the United States, there has to be a scarcity on the market or the perception of scarcity on the market. And I said, Katie, you have said something profound.
Yeah.
I applaud her.
Yeah, and it's true. And what's happened is, oil prices now have gone up because of these sanctions against both Russia and China, their oil, some of their oil interests, and of course the threats against Venezuela. And as you say, that will lead to a panic and to Trump's ability to do more drastic things to get oil, not only within the U.S., but outside it as well.
Switching countries, same continent, Trump suggests U.S. will buy Argentine beef to bring down prices for American consumers. Has he lost sight of his base? He's already alienated soy farmers, and now he wants to seriously piss off American beef farmers?
Yeah, why isn't he buying American beef? I mean, that just seems obvious, right? This America First thing that he promised is just it's a total lie. I mean, there's nothing America First about any of his policies. Mm-hmm. It's Israel first. It's Argentina second. He's also going to help prop up their economy because it's collapsing. Where is the help for our farmers? Where is the help for average Americans? It's not coming, right? The cavalry is not coming, at least not for us. And he is losing his base. He will, if he continues with these policies, he will be one of the most unpopular presidents in history.
if you look at this in the context of markets, what he's done with the trade war as it relates to China, and because I want to say China bought what 80% of our soy production or something along those lines, and now they have shifted that relationship to Brazil and I think to Argentina. So this, I'm just wondering what would be or what could be the reciprocal impact, not reciprocal, what could be the similar impact on the beef market. He's because he's not only decimating relationships, he's impacting markets.
Yeah, he's going to undercut the U.S. beef market. I mean, that's what he's going to do.
Right.
You know, all the cowboys that supported him, he's going to lose their support. You know, again, it just seems madness. He is the mad king at this point. None of it seems to make any sense. At least not from the perspective of the American people. We are not benefiting from any of these policies. He could destroy the beef industry by what he's doing. You saw he's even importing Russian eggs. That's not even being talked about much, but it's just, I don't know where all this is going. And also, because of the tariffs against China, China's retaliated by refusing to sell rare earth minerals to the U.S., which the U.S. desperately needs for its military industrial complex, for its other technologies. He's leading this country down the road to perdition. He's destroying the economy, which again is the one thing I think he claimed he would improve.
Well, I think this proverb is accredited to an African, but they always say it's an African proverb, even if it comes from Cleveland. Actually, it's Sun Tzu. The evil ruler will burn down his own village in order to rule over the ashes.
Yeah,
that's Sun Tzu. That's
right, and I think
Sun Tzu said it while he was in Africa. That's what it was.
We're seeing that not only in Trump, but I also think amongst a lot of the billionaires and trillionaires around Trump. I mean, you do have the sense they're willing to burn down the world to rule over, as you say, the ashes, to live in their bunkers or live in space or whatever they think they're going to do. And that's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Robert Brown asks a very good question. How important are Venezuelan resources to the United States?
Well, again, I think any oil, given that it has the largest oil reserves in the world, and given how close they are to the United States, and given the problems in the Middle East, they've always been an important supplier of oil to the U.S. Do we desperately need that oil? No, we've lived without it now for a while, or mostly lived without it. But again, it's about control. It's about wanting to control in order to control the entire world. To control those types of oil resources would give the U.S. a lot of power. But by the way, there's other resources there too. That Venezuela has huge untapped diamond and gold reserves. It's a very, very resource-rich country, and so it is very coveted by the United States. Not because the U.S. needs that stuff, but because it can profit from it
and control the markets in the process.
Yes,
and when you have I think an incredibly myopic and antiquated view of the world, as in we will continue to extract fossil fuel, use fossil fuel, instead of understanding, no, we really need to be shifting off of that and moving towards renewables. It's that kind of thinking that has us pursuing and engaging in these ridiculous exploits and expeditions as we are. Final question to you, and I'm sorry we took so long to get to this point, but Rubio and JD Vance are now in the Zionist colony of Israel. And again, I never saw this so-called peace deal as being a peace deal in the first place. Israel has seemingly been using every excuse it can not to live up to what was agreed to. Give us your thoughts, give us your update on what's going on in the region and why.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. Israel doesn't want to stop the war. Netanyahu doesn't want to stop the war. I don't think Netanyahu feels, or the even more right-wing people in his coalition, they don't see the job done until every Palestinian in Gaza is killed and the West Bank. And so, as you say, they're finding every excuse to continue the war, to deny the people of Gaza aid, to starve them out. And so you're right. I don't think this is a peace deal per se. I will say that, The Onion, as they often do, had it right. They had a headline saying Netanyahu, agrees to stop killing Palestinians in such big numbers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that one still has to be happy for the fact that while about 100 Palestinians have been killed since the signing of that peace deal, which was when, October 13th, I think.
Sounds right.
So that's about coming on 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's better than 100 people being killed a day. And, it's just anything that gives any breathing space to the people in Gaza, I welcome, right? I mean, it's something. I know it's in many ways a charade, but it may be enough to allow them to survive. And so I welcome that. But I do, I have friends in Gaza on the ground, and they're saying things haven't really changed. They're not getting food they need and the water. Many still haven't been able to return to their homes. Even if they did, their homes are gone. So things are pretty desperate. But again, at least the bloodletting has slowed down a bit, which is, it's sad to say that is somehow an advance.
And who was it that just said this? I'm sorry. Was it Kevin Baptist? Thank you for that $5 super sticker. When the lion and the leopard go to war, which one should the zebra root for?
Yeah,
that's a great point. I think it was Mr. Boston. Yeah, Mr. Boston said Russian eggs are good, and they're great if they're Fabergé eggs.
Yeah, well, those are the best, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. You ever had an omelet made from a Fabergé egg?
Good stuff.
Priceless. Finally, Professor Kovalik, if you would please, you've got 2 books out.
Yeah. Well, I got about 10 books out, but yeah, I got 2
recently.
Newer books out. Yeah.
Yes. So please tell us about the books. You've been on already to talk about them, but I wanted, for those that didn't see you when you were here when the books came out, sell the books, Dan.
Yeah, well, the most recent is Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change, which I think gives you a real good explanation of what really happened in Syria, why it happened, and what is happening there now. I think it's a story that has not been told well, certainly in book form. So I urge you to get that book. And the other one is The Case for Palestine, which I think is a very good primer about the history of Zionism and the Israeli occupation up to the present time. So I urge you to get those books. You can get them at Amazon. You can get them from my publishers, Skyhorse Publishing, Baraka Books, and also Baraka Books, 2 separate publishers, or at your local bookstore. And if they don't have it, ask them to order it.
And folks, let me tell you, if you haven't been able to discern this or figure this out for yourselves, Dan Kovalik is, first of all, an incredibly humble guy. And he's a brilliant guy. And the research that he's done, the places that he goes, the situations that he has put himself in. Again, I remember he called into my XM show from the border of Syria, and made an incredibly simple but great point when you said the media is reporting the number of people that are coming back into Syria. They're not telling you the number of people that are fleeing, and I'm sitting on the border watching them go by. And that photograph you sent me of that kid sitting on that wall was, I wish if I had thought about it, I would have given it to Melody to have it put up. We'll do that the next time I have you on. So anyway, folks, I say all that to say you need to buy Dan's books, because this man is on point. And I mean that as seriously and honestly as I can possibly say. And we got to talk about Arthur Ashe, and we'll talk about that offline.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you.
And as I texted you, great picture of your dad, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I thought you might like that. Thank you.
All right, folks. Hey, Dan, appreciate it.
All right.
And so I got to thank Professor Dan Kovalik for joining me today. Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. And folks, you hear me say this all the time. We could, those 165 of you that are still here, if each of you could send this link to 2 of your friends who you think would be interested in this content, we'd greatly appreciate it, because we're trying to grow this thing as quickly as we can, so we can keep the lights on. Got to keep the lights on, because I can't do this in the dark. New episode tomorrow. It'll probably be me giving you a wrap up of the week, of the week stories. And in spite of that, please follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show. Follow us on social media. All the links are below in the show description. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter. And even though I might be a lightweight, I punch well above my weight every day. We don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.